Good morning, everyone. Good morning. This is Sean Brown, host of Urban Disruptors Weekly Wrap Up, live this morning from WCMD Studios here at Dare Academy at 1656 Kane Avenue in the great city of Camden, New Jersey. I'm your host, Sean Brown, and today we will be talking about environmental racism. Our special guests are Doug O'Malley, who works on environmental justice issues in New Jersey on a state level, and Councilwoman and second-time guest Shaneka Boucher, who represents the First Ward. First, I'm going to go over just a little bit of the news of what is going on, and then we will bring on our guest for a thorough conversation about what it is. So please share this video. Let your friends and your family know that the Urban Disruptor is live this morning. If you care about the air that you breathe, if you care about the politics that you live in, if you care about how to make your community better, then this is the show for you. If you're watching this on Facebook this morning, please hit like and share so other people can see it too. If you're watching this on YouTube, thank you so much. You can share this as well. We are going to get into it in a moment. Thank you so much for tuning in this morning. Share this video so other people can see what's going on in our community, so that people can learn what is going on. Thank you for all that you do in our community. If you're watching this, that means you care, or you're being nosy. Either way, we're glad we're glad to have you. And thank you for the guests in thank you to the guests in the waiting room. Thank you to the guests in the waiting room. I'm gonna bring you on in a few minutes. Okay, so I want to just get into letting you guys know about some news. So the first thing is there is a storm coming. There's a winter storm coming. Right now they are predicting 6 to 12 inches for Camden County. That's going to start this morning. So maybe by the time the show is over, into Tuesday morning. So today through Tuesday, there will be a wintry mix. So if you didn't do so already, make sure you got some food in your house. Make sure you got some salt. You know where your shovel is. Check on your loved ones to make sure they are okay too. Put your windshield wipers up or whatever it is that you do to protect your car and your vehicle. And get ready for the snow. Get your gloves. Get your hats. I just want to really quick, speaking of gloves and hats, real quick, I just want to give a shout out to Tawanda Green Jones, also known as Wawa, and the group of people that she's working with at Yorkshire. She is collecting hats, clothes, toiletries for people who are homeless or suffering from housing insecurity or clothing or not having enough clothing. So check them out. If you go to Tawanda Green Jones' Facebook page, you can get more information about what she's doing there. Thank you again for tuning in this morning. I'm going to get into the interviews with our guests about environmental justice issues in a few minutes. But first, I want to just share some other news. So if you are a small business owner, just a reminder that there is money for your business. I don't normally do commercials on this show, but I can do a commercial for my own company. I'm a grant writer. This is what I do during the day. I do strategic planning and grant writing. That's what pays my bills in my company. And there is money from the payment protection program that the Small Business Administration has. If you are a small business owner and you had your business started your business as late as February 2020, or in that time period, maybe you didn't register as an LLC, but you're acting as a sole proprietor, you can qualify for grant money, PPP, EIDL, and soon the next phase from the NJEDA money will come out. You may have no idea what I'm talking about. If you're a small business owner and you don't know how to get grants for your business or how to get loans or financing or build your credit, if you need help with business planning, let me know. Hit me up in my inbox, put a comment in the comments, text me, call me, email me, DM me on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, and I'll be more than happy to help you out. Good morning to my family who may be watching, to my friends, to my colleagues. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please share this video because we have a thorough conversation for what is going on in our community with a focus on environmental justice. Just some other news. There is if you know me well, you may know I'm a big fan of fireworks on Broadway. Fireworks is an art gallery that hosts artist space on the second floor. I believe they're known as the artists upstairs. They have a new executive director. Stephen Rodas wrote this article earlier this week with a beautiful picture taken by our former guest, Eric James Montgomery. Her name is Asaya, hopefully I'm saying your name right, Asaya Kurtz of Haddon Heights, originally from Memphis, Tennessee, a city I've been to. I like Memphis a lot. I had some fantastic barbecue there a few years ago. She's taking over for Cassie McDonald, who I consider to be a friend, a colleague, a beautiful person. I think the board here is doing a great job in making sure that fireworks on Broadway is a hub for the arts and artists. My son just took a class from there last week. They had on abstract art. Got an art kit from fireworks. So if you're not familiar with it on Broadway, check it out, look it up. I'm going to put this article in the comments and you can take a look and see exactly what is going on. Hey, good morning. Good morning, my brother. All right, next. Okay, we had a shooting here in Camden. Another article by Stephen Rodas that he wrote yesterday. Sicklerville man, 28 dies in Camden Thursday night shooting. This happened on the 1300 block of Browning Street, affectionately known as Pollock Town to some. Whitman Park is the proper name. Mr. Santino Thomas, may God bless your soul, may you forever live in peace, was shot. We have a violence problem in Camden. This is not a secret. This news gets out to everywhere else. So for anybody that talks about how crime is dropping in Camden, that certainly may be true in a technical perspective, but we can't deny the fact that we have too many young people who choose to resolve their issues with violence instead of with punching somebody in the face, which I prefer to do sometimes, or more effective meanings of like just forgetting about it or having a conversation about it or having a mediator, a mutual person help you resolve your issue. Thinking about it for a week. Too many young people are too quick to pick up a gun, and this is because of unaddressed trauma that they have and a lack of economic investment where men can feel like fathers, men can feel like husbands, like good boyfriends, not with the violence that they can portray, but instead by the job that they have and positive things that they are doing with their lives. So I hope the people that did this, that justice finds them, and I pray for that young man's family. All right, next. Camden man killed by hit and run driver, suspect wanted. There is on the 2600 block of Mount Ephraim, which is also in Whitman Park, Lawrence Lloyd, 46 years old, suffered from injuries to the head after a hit and run. The driver who hit him just drove off after the incident. They believe it's a Mazda Tribute or Ford Escape. And it may have damage to the front. I will put this link in the story. Listen, there's no such thing as, if you are not involved in a crime yourself or you planned it and you know somebody that did something bad, that's not snitching if you tell on them. That's justice. Because if somebody in my family gets hit by a car, I sure as hell want that person to be caught. So if you know who this is, don't feel like there's some street code that doesn't even really exist that you have to live by. Turn them in. Let them know what's going on. All right. Last story. Camden scrapyard fire forces residents to evacuate as fire crews battle. So what is a scrapyard? So if you have an old car, if you have scrap metal, it goes somewhere. The place it goes, they break the metals apart. They put certain metals in certain piles. This stuff stacks on top of each other. EMR bought out a company called Camden Iron and Recycling several years ago. Camden Iron and Recycling has been Camden for a very, very long time. EMR is a company, their headquarters, I believe, is in Louisiana. They also have offices in England, throughout the United States of America. I know of a few people that work there, both in the scrapyard itself and in the executive office. Everyone I know that works there are good and decent people. But EMR, there was let me read this. Firefighters in Camden are working to get a scrapyard fire under control. Smoke from the blaze has caused evacuations in the area. The fire has been burned for hours. Friday's severe weather played a role. I was out I went out that day. Look, it felt like it was 20 degrees, very, very cold. Some of the police officers got injured. This was on the 1200 block of South 2nd Street, which is really 2nd and Mechanic. So this is back in the industrial park area of Camden, close, not far from the Delaware River. Fire Chief Mike Harper says the fire started from scraps in the junkyard and quickly spread, producing a tremendous amount of smoke. So a lot of stuff happened. I do want to, as I bring on the guests, I do want to give a shout out to whoever was responsible in helping people get into hotel rooms. Although I would say that's in a way the bare minimum, but it was nonetheless, it was good that happened. I know for a fact that people's doors have been knocked on to check to see if they were okay. I hope that everyone is okay. Look, corporations are always going to be among us. There will always be a place to take our trash. And when bad things happen, we need to do something to address it. So what can we do about environmental racism in our community? Some people say that this is an example because you wouldn't see a scrapyard like this in Cherry Hill, in Merchantville, in Pennsauken, that's so close to residential areas. So I have some questions about this myself. So I'm going to bring on our guests, Doug O'Malley and Shaneka Boucher. Thank you so much, guys, for being a guest today. Can you guys hear me okay? Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay? All right. Thank you so much for being a guest today. Thank you so much for the audience that is tuning in. If you are just tuning in, my name is Sean Brown. I'm the Urban Disruptor. Today, our guests are Doug O'Malley of Environment New Jersey and Councilwoman of the First Ward, where this fire occurred, Shaneka Boucher. Shaneka, this happens to be your second, I would say this is, since you've been on council for 52 plus 4, 56. Since you've been on council for 56 weeks, this is your second major environmental justice issue. I think the first one was with Covanta and the microgrid, and now there is an environmental issue with this fire that was ablazing. Have you found your inner environmentalist yet?
I've had to. I've learned a lot more.
Why can't I hear you? Or is that the volume off?
Hold on, let's see. Can you hear me now? Doug, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear, Councilwoman.
Okay, so it must just be Sean. Nice to meet you, Doug.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. Yeah, we wish it wasn't.
There we go. I had a little mistake there. Sorry. Sorry, Shaneka. I didn't hear what you said. Could you answer my question?
No, I said yes. I've learned a lot more about the environment than I ever knew that I could, and I'm still learning, right? Because as we've been looking into what to do and what type of solutions we're going to work on collectively with the city and the county, I'm still learning every day.
And Doug, I have not seen you face to face in a long time due to the pandemic, but we've met many times, and I know how hard you work in Trenton to make sure that our state legislature and executive branch have the information and tools that they need to make sure on the state level they're doing their best to see a good environment in New Jersey. So first, thank you for being a guest again to both of you. Doug, good morning. And Doug, just on a global, huh?
No, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, just on a global perspective. On a global perspective, what are your thoughts on the status of urban environmental issues in Black and Brown communities?
Man, you start with the softball, Sean. Let me just start with just some kudos, because I think that's in order here. First off, I just wanted to thank you, Councilwoman, for being out there on the ground in the neighborhood, 5 hours after the fire, helping community residents, helping the folks at Sacred Heart to figure out what exactly had happened and to make sure they knew that this was a health emergency. And then also, Sean, I wanted to thank you not only for highlighting this issue, but for being an independent voice in Camden and making sure that there's an audience for these issues. Because this, to answer your question directly, this is much more than just one bad incident at a facility and one bad fire. EMR is a global company, but in this case, they have a record of multiple fires over the course of a very short period of time. And as you referenced, Sean, these fires aren't happening in Cherry Hill. They're not happening in Merchantville. And that's not an accident. And I think, we saw a very hugely important environmental justice bill that was signed into law by Governor Murphy just last fall. That law, though, was focusing on new facilities. This is obviously an existing facility. And I think the concern here is that, yes, recycling is good, and EMR is employing Camden residents. That's also good. That does not give them a carte blanche to have a sideways environmental record, and to obviously this fire started. There wasn't an arsonist for this fire per se, but there needs to be better response. There needs to be better monitoring. And there needs to be accountability by the state and the DEP to ensure that we're not seeing residents being woken up in the middle of the night and have to be, literally flee their homes because the air coming in is going to sicken them. That is the definition of environmental racism. And I'll just conclude by saying that this isn't obviously happening in a vacuum. EMR is right next to 676. It's obviously not that far from Covanta's, incinerator. Which has been an environmental blight on South Camden for now more than a generation. So that's the totality that we need to look at facilities and accidents like this.
So thank you. So Councilwoman Boucher, do you think that local government has a responsibility to hold corporations like EMR accountable when there's harm caused in the community?
Yes, definitely. Definitely, and we do. And so I think that the bigger question is it effective, right? Like, is everything that we have under our ability or under our belt to be able to do legally, through the powers that we have as city council and the mayor of the city, is that enough, right? And then how do we work with the state government to make sure, if it needs to be some sort of harsher penalties, how do we change legislation? But I know that there's been a lot of legislative changes. I actually put through a bill also in the city that was passed by all of city council. And again, at this moment, we formed the Camden Clean Corridors committee, and we have things that we've been looking to do. But when these incidents come up, it is not like the city is not taking any action. And if you actually look at the record, you'll find that they've been fined, right? So through the powers that the city has, you'll see that we are holding them accountable. But the larger question for me is really, is it enough? And then how do we start preventing these things from being able to happen again? Because EMR has been here before I got in the seat. Like you said, 56 weeks ago, before I was here in the seat, and they're in this community. So we just want to make sure that if they are going to be here and they're going to stay, that we begin to hold them accountable and make sure that things like this don't happen in the future.
I just want to highlight some of the things that people are saying in the comments real quick. First, good morning to everyone that's tuning in. Thank you so much. So Ben Sirocco, who is a ongoing critic of the environmental issues in our city, says, okay, really curious to hear Shaneka Boucher City Council's members' views regarding EMR's ties to the proposed trash incinerator powered microgrid plan, and whether she thinks EMR's involvement is still a good idea. And just before you answer that question, Councilwoman Boucher, let me just be clear to our audience who maybe haven't followed this issue. Not to be graphic here, but when I pee and poop in the toilet and put my toilet paper in it and flush it, all that stuff goes somewhere. And where it goes, if you live in Camden County, it comes to Camden not too far from where EMR is, and it's processed. And there's a whole process, and in that whole process, because they're burning stuff, it produces electricity. And a microgrid is a process where there can be pure, cleaner electricity produced. And this is something that has been suggested. Some activists have said that we should not be sending our pee and poop to Camden because it's not good for our environment, because as it burns, it puts things into the atmosphere that people breathe in. It has a smell to it. There has been a debate, but as my understanding goes, and I know you and I have talked about this, your trash can only go so many, trash can only be processed so many ways, and it doesn't seem like we necessarily have a great alternative. But anyway, specific to Ben's question, are you familiar with the connection between AMR, Covanta, and that kind of, in your area where you live, where you're a councilwoman, the environmental issues that exist there?
So before I came to Camden, because I've been here 12 years, right, there was a person who everybody knows, Father Doyle, who took on these companies for years, over 40 years, he fought them. And we know the type of influence that he had. And he wasn't as successful as he wanted to be in fighting them and getting this industry out. So what I could say over the last year, what I've done as a councilwoman is I have my community working on a neighborhood plan, which would potentially protect the community and neighborhood. We're working with the city. Like I told you earlier, I formed a committee, and it's not just a committee of city officials. We have hospitals. We have a lot of experts on all sides really looking at what we can do to go forward to tackle some of these solutions. And the microgrid project right now it's still being studied in terms of what they're going to do. And it still has to come back before us. So we're waiting to hear the results of the studies that are happening and figuring out, who will or who should be involved, or even if the microgrid will happen. And so the purpose of the microgrid, it was really brought up by Andy Cricken, who we know, and I think a lot of people respect Andy and know the type of work that he tries to put forth. What I would say is when we think about what's happening, not just in New Jersey, because we know in Atlantic City, they probably wish that they had a microgrid, right? So the purpose of the project was really to protect us if we had a really big storm. And if we're talking about environmental injustice, the thought was, would people come to rescue Camden if something really bad happened? And we're right on the water. But, when people talk about some of these issues, the CCMUA is literally attached to my home. And when this happened, the air was coming into my home, right? So I think even if I wanted to ignore it, I couldn't, even for selfish reasons. So I always say, it's like the work that you can do, you cannot reverse 50 years plus work in a year, right? You have to have a place that you start, and then you have goals to continue to work along the way to get finished. I will take full accountability for not maybe moving it along faster and still learning how to move these projects along. And I think for anyone who wants to help, or any experts out there that have maybe some recommendations of like how we can move things along faster, but even the state of New Jersey haven't moved these sort of environmental issues along very quickly. It has been a long fight and an uphill battle. But I'm willing to work with the community and battle with them to make sure that we get to a better place than we started. And I can say, from where I started last year, we've seen some results. So, and I'm just going to continue until I get the results that we all want.
So on that, thank you, Councilwoman. So on that point, Doug, what have you seen throughout the state as a way of residents and local governments holding corporations who poison people accountable?
Yeah, so this is a great question, obviously, Sean, because this is not, and thank you for that lengthy answer, Councilwoman. This is not unique to Camden, although I will say the fights over incinerators, and that's what obviously the Covanta facility is, and local neighborhoods is one that is not, unfortunately, unique to Camden. We also see this up in Newark with the Essex County incinerator, and I think it's important to remember that there are incinerators around the state. Each one of them nearly was fought heavily by residents at the time. And so if you go up the turnpike, in the late 80s, the amount of organizing done in the Ironbound in Newark against the Essex County facility was huge. There were thousands of people that came out and marched against that facility. And honestly, for the Camden incinerator, there was similar, and Father Doyle was a leader on this, there was similar activism to avoid that incinerator from ever being built. What we've seen over the course of the last 3+ decades is that some incinerators have been retired. In Warren County, for example, that Covanta incinerator was decommissioned last decade, partially because of demand. And I think this speaks to just a really real kind of crux here, is that we do not need these incinerators. They are marketed by Covanta as waste to energy. If this particular facility in Camden provides 20 megawatts. That's not nothing, but that's not an excuse for why we should continue to have an environmental hazard plague the residents of Camden and Waterfront South. And I want to use a direct parallel on the microgrid, because I think, we all know the saying, 2 wrongs don't make a right. Well, in this case, 1 wrong and 1 right still do not make a right, because just of this past week, this Thursday, Governor Murphy joined Speaker Coughlin and a set of assembly members and Congressman Frank Pallone in Perth Amboy, another community that has air pollution issues and environmental racism concerns, and announced the unveiling of the state's first community solar installation of 11 megawatts. And community solar is explicitly designed to bring solar to people that might not be homeowners, to low and moderate income residents that need a break on the utility bills. And that's the sort of project we should look at in Camden. And we ultimately should be looking at a microgrid, but a microgrid that's actually powered by clean, renewable energy. And that's really where we should be going on the Covanta site. We should not be assuming that Covanta's incinerator is going to be with Camden for another generation. We should be looking at retirement. We should be looking at ways to reduce garbage because obviously that has to go somewhere. And then I guess my final point here is that, at the very least, we should be cracking down on Covanta's air permits to make it, to have them use the best available technology. But that ultimately is a short-term solution. The long-term solution is retire that facility, because you can never mitigate the noxious air pollutants that come out of that stack.
Councilwoman, thank you, Doug. Councilwoman, a few people asked about the committee that you mentioned earlier. Is there a way that conversations like what Doug just mentioned about solar panels, to see if there's a way to incorporate that into our environmental justice plan for Camden?
It is. A lot of things, like I said, the microgrid is still being studied. So it is not that anything right now is final. And then people will find out, will be in the new report. I think that the problem that we run into a lot of the times is there are so many assumptions made because people just put out so much misinformation about projects. And obviously people are reading what they found in the first 2 studies. And that is the reason why you have another one happening right now. But I would also say, as we talk about racism, when we think about just environmental racism, we also have to start looking at to some of our suburban communities where it's like, so where are things going? Because we are fine concentrating everything in Camden, every problem. And then we talk about, we put it on elected officials here to handle because the suburban towns won't take any of it. And so then they tell us, that we're not smart enough or we don't do enough to solve the problems, but they don't give us the resources to be able to do it. And so I think that if you look through New Jersey, you'll see, like Doug mentioned, this is a problem all throughout the state. So I think that the bigger issue that we have to talk about, I know people talked about in the summer in terms of racism and diversity and inclusion, but the larger conversation is you could find it everywhere, right? You could find it everywhere and everywhere we go. So in the city of Camden, we don't have a lot of resources. We have a city whose majority below the poverty line. And so that brings a lot of challenges. If we had the money, we would do a whole lot more. And I know that people always point to the corporations, but we also know that there's so many churches here, universities, hospitals that don't pay. So it's not easily fixed. And I know people have been working to fix it way before I was born, or at the beginning of before I was born. So I would just say, as a new elected leader in the city, we are looking into every option. So I just want people to know that, because it comes up a lot, like we are just saying no to solar. That's not going to be the case. We're going to say yes to every option that we have that'll make clean energy possible.
I have just a tiny bit of pushback, Shaneka, forgive me, but
Okay.
I am the urban disruptor, so here we are. This is what I would say. I remember when the 76ers, Haltech, other corporations got these tax incentives to come into Camden, and at the time Dana Red was mayor, we, in a very friendly, respectful way, asked the mayor to hold these corporations accountable that were getting tax incentives that then council, before you got there, allowed to not pay property taxes, but instead have a payment in lieu of taxes to have a community benefits agreement. That did not occur. I talked to the school district to say, how are these corporations contributing? They don't pay in paying a pilot. They contribute $0 to the Camden education system. So whether your child goes to a district charter or Renaissance school, they're getting $0 from the biggest moneymakers in our city. Haltech is $1 billion company. I believe that local government has a tremendous responsibility in that triangle of corporation, community, and government to hold the corporation accountable to what it does for the community. And I do not think that whether we're talking about environmental issues or economic development issues, I think that there's a bigger role that corporations can play. And that means Mayor Frank Moran, the council that you serve on, also have a bigger role to play in how and what those community benefits agreements look like. Or to take the point that that Ben made earlier in the comments, saying maybe not even community benefits agreements, but even questioning presence to begin with. Is this the type of place that we want in our community? Should we have residential neighborhoods and corporations who do certain types of work with chemicals so close to one another? Is this a planning issue? How, if this becomes a displacement issue, then how do we relocate people to live in safer, cleaner communities? I think that these are conversations that I wish we could have, and I appreciate you being in the hot seat and answering these questions. But I also look forward to our mayor, our city council, people have been there longer, city officials, county officials, to see how if there's a possible way to figure out how we can hold people's feet to the fire and get some better outcomes than what we've had so far. Any thoughts on that?
So you said that we disagree, but we don't. And I think that, like I said earlier, you guys can't make any assumptions that those things don't happen. But again, like I said, in a year, so we started those conversations, right? So that is the whole purpose of a neighborhood plan that wasn't adopted by the city that we're working on. You have to get a lot of input. So you have to bring in these corporations to be a part of it. And we started that process. You have to bring in the community to be a part of it. And we started that process. You have to get government on board. And all of those things are happening, right? So the community has been leading the conversations about environment and what they want to see and what they want to do. We've been listening. We've been taking action on the things that they've been bringing to us. So there's been, numerous meetings with neighborhoods and people and taking feedback. And like I said, people are going to always have their opinions on how you could get it done or if you could get it done better. But these processes are not going to be reversed so quickly. If we're talking about being inclusive, like you just mentioned, Sean, right? Like to include people, it takes a while. And even to raise the money for these neighborhood plans. And some of it, like I said, I wasn't here when they started making community benefit agreements, but I have already pushed a community benefits agreement, right, within my first year. So like I said, I'm going to, stand behind the community on this environmental justice work. People may not agree with everything that I do, but I know what I'm trying to accomplish. We have goals, and I am listening to residents.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman, I'm gonna keep the conversation going with Doug because I don't want your friends getting upset with some of the things that I'm about to say. But thank you so much for being a guest, Councilwoman Boucher. You are a friend, a fantastic council person, extremely responsive. The police department is better because of the advocacy that you did as a council person. I think that people are safer because of it. I think that we are having in-depth conversations, and many people in the community, including people in the comments, are able to disagree and know where at least somebody stands because of positions that you've taken, what you've said to the media. I appreciate what you do. I appreciate how your personality, how you are able to work with the mayor and your colleagues on city council and county officials to get things done. And what you do as a mother in our city as well. So thank you, Councilwoman Boucher, for being a guest today.
Thank you, Sean. It was really nice to meet you, Doug. And I really appreciate, you holding me accountable. It's okay, Sean. That's what you're here for. And I really appreciate this show too. Doug, hopefully we can talk again because I would love to get some more input from you. Have a good day. Bye.
Thanks.
See you. Thank you. Okay. So Doug, I didn't want to say. I mean, I don't know. I get when I know people personally, I feel weird saying certain things, but one of the things that bothers me about what happens in Camden, and I'm sure this happens in other big cities in New Jersey as well, is how I feel that our city government leaders, and I'm not saying this about Frank Moran as mayor himself because I don't know enough about it, but I can make some assumptions that they get so cozy with corporate leadership. They rely on them for money. The lawyers that represent the corporations often also have relationships with city government, including Parker McKay, where George Norcross's brother, works. Have you seen good resistance from local governments against corporate pressure to kind of bend to their will?
Well, I mean, I think there's kind of two ways to answer that question. One, certainly on kind of what we're focused on environmental impacts of disasters, right? No mayor, no council member wants to see fires like we saw. No mayor wants to see their residents get sick or have to go to the hospital or literally have to get evacuated. That being said, obviously the mayor and the council, and you heard this a little bit from the councilwoman, they want to be encouraging businesses to come to the city. And the dialogue and back and forth you were just having with the councilwoman was, focused on, well, what's the price, right? Obviously Camden wants jobs and it wants industry, but how much has Holtec benefited Camden residents? What is the benefit of the quote unquote renaissance of the Camden waterfront for the average Camden resident? And those are questions that, I think that the mayor and the council have been challenged with, because what's good for downtown isn't necessarily good for the city. When you think about also the tax base, right? When you have nonprofits, whether it be hospitals or Rutgers, right? You have a revenue issue that's historically been a huge challenge for any mayor. So I think part of the challenge, right, is that there's a little bit of comparison in Atlantic City and Camden, right, where there's been historically a low bar. If your mayor doesn't get indicted, you consider that as be a successful administration. And obviously you have to raise it farther. The bar needs to be higher of
Much higher.
Not just, we want a legal city government, but we want a city government that's going to attract, investment, work with the state government, right? And for a long time, Camden didn't have control over its own city government, attract and partner with the state, but also not be beholden to these interests. And I think, really you're highlighting some of the challenges of, whether it be the tax credits or payment in lieu of taxes. Those are issues that obviously, any mayor can't just be beholden to one corporate entity or one particular donor or one particular power player, right? Camden, like all cities, is a diverse place. And if people don't feel like they have a seat at the table, even what's good for downtown might not be good for the city. And I think we've seen that play out with some of the development that is downtown, but obviously there's been a lack of investment in other community neighborhoods. I guess the one thing, just to put this as from an environmental perspective, is there is a real challenge as you're looking to quote redevelop the waterfront, and not just in downtown. You need to be thinking about what's the best use of your waterfront. So Petty's Island, for example, which isn't Camden direct, but effectively feels like it's part of the city. That is historically been an environmental blight with the Citgo refineries. It is now essentially an environmental jewel. It's not open to the public yet, but it should be. And so, how do we make sure that places like Pine Point Park and the right now undeveloped part of the waterfront in the northern part of the city, don't just become paved over? So the Harrison Avenue landfill and the new park that's going to be opening up there, that should be the norm. That's how we should use our waterfront, and we shouldn't just sell it off to the next scrap metal company that might be able to pay property taxes. So I just I think this is a larger issue, right? Of how do we define success, and how do we make sure that we're getting investment in the city that doesn't include that payoff of we'll give you jobs, we'll give you taxes, but you're going to have to suffer pollution.
And I just wanted to mention, Camden, like many urban cities in America and New Jersey, has a underground economy. And one of the things that fuels that underground economy is the fact that, I put out a old bed frame the other day, and I put it out on a Sunday. My trash gets picked up on a Thursday. I knew that bed frame would not be outside until Thursday. And within 24 hours, somebody came and picked it up, and I'm glad they did. And I'm sure they took it to a scrap metal yard and got money from it. There is an economy from that. And when you look at transportation as an issue, it's not uncommon to see somebody pushing a shopping cart in Camden with scrap metal in it. Some of these folks are unfortunately stealing these pipes from abandoned homes, but some are taking it from what the trash that people put outside. There is an underground economy that's attached to this. I just want to say, I just want to tell my audience a few things. One, thank you so much for tuning in. Second, any feedback, positive or negative, is always appreciated. You can put it in the comments, text me, call me, let me know. Third, Councilwoman Davis, sorry, I forgot to acknowledge your comment earlier when Councilwoman Boucher was on, but thank you for tuning in and thank you for your comments. Sandra Kelly, I was just about to say there is a question from Kate Cruz, but I see you just addressed it. And this is about the solar energy. Here's the thing that I'm excited about. Environmental issues are typically not at the forefront of what we talk about in terms of justice in cities like Camden. But at the end of the day, the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, and the food that we eat makes us who we are. We need oxygen. We obviously need food. We need water, and we shouldn't have to worry about the quality of that any less, only because our flag is planted and is in the city. And we should be able to trust that our elected and appointed officials on the city and county level are being advocates for the people and not carrying the water for corporations. Let them carry their own water. They make money. These are mega profitable companies. So with that said, Doug, what are your thoughts on the residents suing EMR for the harm that was caused in their homes and the grand inconvenience and sickness that occurred? Or do you just say this is not negligence, this is an accident, accidents happen, and everybody should move on?
That's why we have courts and we have rules of law, right? So that litigation that's being pursued by residents, that's a litigation that should happen, right? Because there needs to be accountability. EMR is a international company, right? And so it has, it definitely has Camden roots, but you can certainly imagine if a fire like this was happening in the CEO's backyard, they would be livid, right? And so there's no reason why this should be somehow more acceptable. And this is not a one-off, right? There was a fire last February. There's been 3 fires since 2016. There needs to be greater accountability. There needs to be greater, there's be also just kind of, a guarantee that, maybe we're not going to see a fire never again, but we need to have a better response so that we don't have residents needing to flee their home that, by the way, are more likely to be suffering from asthma. So I think litigation is appropriate. I would say that the concern generally is that you need to have strong laws to be able to litigate under. And so one of the things that gives me hope is that one of Camden County's own, Olivia Glenn, is now the Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Environmental Protection. She focuses on environmental justice. And so when we talk about the environmental justice law that was signed in a lot, that's for new facilities. This is an existing one. So we need to be looking at cumulative impacts. We need to be looking at the permitting. And this probably speaks more to facilities like Covanta. But obviously, at this point, it's becoming an annual event for fires at EMR. Scrap metal recycling is good. Fires that pollute our neighborhood obviously should not be a cost of doing business. So, I think the idea here is, yes, we need litigation, but we also, need strong laws that can allow litigation to be successful.
I just want to acknowledge some of the things in the comments real quick. If anybody, I see some people in the comments, and I know some people are watching who are truly care about these issues deeply. If you want to come on video, you can. Here is, I'm going to put the link in the comments again. Obviously you don't have to do that, but just in case, I think it would be interesting. Let's see what happens. I haven't seen a lot of you face to face in a long time. So Carmen Lozada had some comments about solar. Carmen, thank you again publicly for your contributions with the U.S. Census. very important work. Sandra Kelly has some tidbits about community solar projects in Camden. Thank you for sharing. Monique Ragsdale, our new incoming president of the NAACP, a longtime activist and a beautiful person. Thank you for your contributions to the conversation as well. Congratulations to you as our incoming president. I say as a member of the NAACP. I think issues like environmental justice will be taken more seriously with your leadership and the team that you are in process of developing. And Kate Cruz. Kate, I wanted to invite you as a guest, and I think I couldn't find your email address or something. But thank you so much for watching and tuning in. You are a great advocate for environmental issues in our community. And I'm glad you're able to talk to Sandra. And Michelle Pace said something that is very interesting. These companies should be responsible for paying and for providing home air purifiers and home purifying HVAC upgrades. HVAC is heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. Upgrades to all homes in the community, just as a start, until the entire pollution issue is solved. I completely agree. Let me be really clear. On a random day, well, my son went to Sacred Heart for a year, which is in that neighborhood. And I remember a few times he came out of the school and he had this like look on his face because, my children are very dramatic. They get it from their mother, not me. But he had this look on his face and he's like, I'm like, why you got that look on your face? Like the smell. I'm like, oh yeah, well, as if the wind blows west to east, you're going to smell this funky, putrid odor. And that's on any given day. The smell from a few days ago was absolutely horrifying. To see white smoke filling up a neighborhood. And by the way, the only thing, and I talked to several people about what happened behind the scenes. To see that the only thing that the mayor has to say about this is a comment about where people can get help on Facebook is inadequate. We need our local leaders to step up. They will make mistakes. They may have different people that are all aiming for their attention, and I get that. But at the end of the day, you work for the people. You work for the residents. The corporations, they got lawyers. They have income. They're going to be okay. They're going to be able to take care of themselves. They're not going anywhere anytime soon. But the people need a government that truly represents them and that doesn't feel conflicted and torn every time they turn around to step up and have some action. Because putting people in hotel rooms, that was good. I'm glad that you did it. But that can't be the extent. What Nichelle just said is so obvious. I have an air purifier in my house. I was about to tell everybody how much it cost, but it was a gift. Keisha, maybe you can tell me how much it was. But I have an air purifier in my house, and I breathe better because of it. And this is what people deserve. The rate, Nichelle just said, I was just thinking this, but Nichelle just said the rates of asthma and COPD and breathing issues in Camden over the past few decades is a disgrace. I think the numbers are, it's either I want to say 1 out of 4 children in Camden has asthma. 1 out of 4 children has asthma. That's not because of genetics. It's because of the environment. And Doug, I want to I might close with you on this. I was reading through the comments that Jordan, Ben, and a few other people that live in that neighborhood had, and there's some suburbanites that don't understand that how can, when you see residential neighborhoods when you see a residential neighborhood right next to something that's funky, like a trash incinerator, a recycling plant, they don't understand why people just don't move. They feel like people have made a choice to live there, therefore deserve to suffer whatever happens. What are your thoughts on that?
That's the definition of environmental racism. No one should be forced to put up with a environmental disaster next to them because they chose to live in that community, right? So that also is just the definition of white privilege too. You don't like it, leave. So and I think Sean just just your monologue there just put a fine point on the fact that honestly the environmental crime isn't just there was an EMR fire right? It's that we have levels of asthma that are just through the roof in Camden. And we should be thinking not just how to prevent the next fire, but how to get those air purifiers, how to get air monitors, so we have a sense of when air pollution is skyrocketing in residential neighborhoods in Camden, to figure out how we get, how we have protections in place, not just to avoid the next fire, but to make sure that kids and adults, for that matter, aren't going to the hospital with sickness. We've heard a lot of work by Camden and some of the doctors, to talk about the impacts of how to stay out of the hospital. Well, one of the best ways to stay out of the hospital is if you have air that you can breathe. And so, I just want to kind of end by saying that, this is the kind of environmental crime we should be talking about. How do we reduce levels of asthma in Camden, and for that matter, in Trenton and Newark and other urban communities around the state? How do we reduce that to, the white population in the suburbs, right? Because that really should be the mark of success. That if you are raising a family and a kid, and your son is the perfect example, Sean, right? Your son shouldn't have to smell a putrid stink, and your son shouldn't be at risk for more asthma just because you live in Camden. And that's really the environmental crime that we need to address.
Doug, I appreciate you so much in being a guest on a Sunday morning. Thank you so much. I'm not a journalist. I'm here to share stories and allow people like you to share your expertise with our community. My ratings in the show look pretty high, and that's not because of me. It's because of you, because I do this every Sunday, but you're the guest. So I greatly appreciate it. I think this issue isn't going anywhere. So if you can, just stay tuned to it. Pay attention to social media. There are some people in the comments who are more experts and paying closer attention to this issue than I am. So hopefully, I put your link in the comments. So if anybody wants to contact Doug, I know he's active on Twitter. He runs his organization out of New Brunswick. Please get in contact with him. Everyone is thanking you in the comments. I too thanking you. I have a few more things to say, but Doug, thank you so much for being a guest today, and I hope you and your family are doing well.
All right. Thank you again, Sean. So great to see you.
Thank you. Guys, I'm going to hold on one second. Somebody's blowing my phone up. I want to make sure they're not trying to be on the show. He's either calling me because he wants to be on the show or he's stuck outside in the cold, and I can't let him in yet because the show's not done, although it's almost done. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you for these very thoughtful comments that you're making. Here's the thing. I think that as a community, we need to make sure that, I'll put it this way. We cannot expect our mayor and council collectively, I'm not picking on anyone in particular, to do any better than what they've done. Whatever we've seen from them in the last few years, they're not going to get any better. This is what they know. This is what they know how to do. This is the extent of what their powers are. So that means we as a community need to educate them. That means we need to educate them and inform them of what's happening. We need to educate them and inform them of what's going on. Let them know what we want and what we expect. Some of these people are sensitive, so you can't be. If you're too aggressive, they end up shutting you out, even if your aggressiveness is appropriate. So you gotta smile. You gotta compliment them. You gotta tell them how awesome they are. You gotta say thank you and please. You gotta be polite. And if that doesn't work, then you push up. This is an election year, so this is the year for Frank and Sheila and Angel and Curtis, if they're going to run for re-election, to step up. We need to hold their feet to the fire, no pun intended, to make sure whatever promises they made are being fulfilled. Shaneka has stepped up to the plate. Sheila, to her credit, has stepped up to the plate. Angel has a few relationships in the community. All right, so I'll give him a point or two for that. Frank, you got to be more present, bro. Be on social, use social media more. You have some good ideas in the comments, including reverse 911 calls that should have been made to the neighborhood. This is all basic stuff. I really don't think it's that complicated. And I don't think anybody can be surprised by me saying our government needs to do better and step up to crises in a more compelling way than they do. Right. Ben, you just wrote, "This is sad, Sean." I don't even know what you're specifically referring to, but I can guess. And it is sad. It is sad. It's sad. It's disappointing. It's frustrating. It's unacceptable. But we have to be united. We can't let our 20% disagreement prevent us from working on what we 80% agree with. You can't be, this is one of the reasons why I like Monique and like that she's the president of the ACP. If Monique and I disagreed on a political issue 3 years ago, that's completely irrelevant to what we agree on today. I'm not going to be disrespectful to her, and she's not going to be disrespectful to me. I'm not going to judge her from our previous disagreement, and she won't judge me. This is how we get things done. I don't like everything that Ben has ever said on social media. He probably doesn't like what I always said. But that doesn't mean that we can't figure out, that we can't see the truth and the wisdom and the issues that we face and figure out how we work towards figuring something out to get better outcomes for people that need it. So thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Sean Brown, the Urban Disruptor. I will have more information that Twan said the worst look. It's not even funny, but if I don't laugh, I'll cry. Twan said the worst local leaders of all time. Agree. Thank you so much for tuning in. I love you. I appreciate you. Criticize me, help me, guide me, take care of yourselves, take care of your families, drink water, eat fruits and vegetables, get sleep. I'm not, but you should get some sleep. Stay warm, stay safe, stay off the roads if you can. Share this video so more people can see what we can do to end environmental racism in our city. If you are compelled to do so, I suggest donating to the Center for Environmental Transformation, CFET, Center for Environmental Transformation, Camden-based organization. You can look them up and go from there. So thank you so much for tuning in. Please share, let people know, give me feedback. God bless you. Have a great day and take care. See you next week.